Well, you've always also kind of been a little bit of a big brother to me because you were kind and respectful to me, even though I was a walk-on. And then you were 2 years ahead of me in med school, so you kind of always looking out for me, man. I appreciate that.
Well, you're quite welcome, but that's how you treat people. Treat them the way you want to be treated, and I think that that's the only way to be.
That's right. Welcome to Under the Knife, the podcast where we cut into topics such as politics, life advice, and medicine, and we do this with the precision of a licensed orthopedic surgeon. I'm your host, Dr. Craig Greene, an orthopedic surgeon and elected public official. Dr. Chad Loup, welcome to the podcast, Under the Knife.
Thank you very much.
You know how that
Thanks
feels.
for having me.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yes. What'd you have today? Surgery this morning?
No, just clinic today. We did a little surgery yesterday.
Yeah, what'd you have yesterday?
We had 5 cases. Actually, an assisted Dr. Fury and a hamstring repair, which was kind of nice, and then did a couple rotator cuffs and carpal tunnels.
You're like the father figure now in the orthopedic world, huh?
I guess so. You know, you kind of move on in your career, and it's kind of nice when you have younger partners you can interact with. They bring a lot of energy and a lot of freshness to the
Quote articles left and right.
Oh, yes, they do. They're very well read, and but it's good. It keeps you on your toes, keeps you up to date. I enjoy it, actually.
You've been a staple now. People don't know you and I are colleagues, partners in the same practice. And you've been down in Gonzales now for, 20 years?
20 years, working on the 21st here coming up in July.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're beloved down there, I know.
It's been very good. I've been very blessed. Ascension Parish has really grown since I started there, and it's really good to see. We're getting a new high school next year. We've got a tremendous amount of growth, and it's been exciting to be down there and watch it happen.
Mm-hmm. Are you still covering high school games?
You know, I did last year. Dutchtown was year 18, and sometimes help with Winder or Santa Ma and EA. But with Dr. Fury on board, we may be moving to that where he can help and be a part of that, which I think he's going to enjoy because it's a commitment to go out there every Friday night, especially now that my kids are grown and gone, and we have a little time to do a little traveling, and may try to do some of that.
Well, I don't know if the listeners know all 3 of them, but you and I are best friends for now, or close friends for probably 30 plus years.
Yes,
and it goes back to LSU football. Curly Hallman.
What a time to be playing LSU football.
Right.
But that's
we should have gotten season tickets that year. Would have been good.
Yeah, that would have been a good price discount.
Now I remember vividly because I was on crutches, and I'm coming out of the training room, and I ask you, you're the starting quarterback at LSU. I mean, not how many people get to say you're starting quarterback at LSU, and then you go on to become an orthopedic surgeon. So we want to hear all about your journey. But I remember saying, Chad, what do you think you're going to do when you finish? And you pointed to my knee. I just had my umpteenth knee surgery. So I think I want to go do that.
Yeah, I've been very, very blessed to obviously play ball at LSU, which was a lot of fun. Made a lot of great friends and met a lot of good people. And then to be an orthopedic surgeon has been great. So, at the time, I figured that obviously couldn't play football forever. But initially, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily want to become an orthopedic surgeon first. I mean, at the time I was gung-ho, childhood dream, wanted to play and play as long as I could. But unfortunately that did not materialize. Had a few opportunities to go maybe and do some free agent stuff, but just didn't work out.
Right.
And was fortunate enough to get into med school. So once I got to med school, it was pretty clear to me that I wanted to do orthopedics because I didn't want to take care of sick patients. Mm-hmm. And you wanted to fix problems and fix things that were broken. Right. So it's been great. I mean, it was a heck of a journey, but all good so far.
Well, look, we have to go back to college because I was a walk-on. You teased me about that. It used to be every day, but now it's about twice a week. I
think you enjoy it. It keeps you balanced. Yeah. Keeps you balanced.
I don't know if Kristen got you to do that or.
No, that's all me.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
I take credit for that.
I can take it. I thought about if I ever write a book, like I should call it "I Walked On" because I walked on the football team. Pretty much walked on to med school. Kind of walked on to orthopedics.
I think you've done very well for yourself.
But there's also this part of the journey of life is like. You got to keep walking on,
Yeah, you can't quit. I mean, you're going to get knocked down. You know that. And that's the wonderful thing about sports and about athletics, football in general. you're going to get knocked down a lot. And, there's a next play. Get up
That's right.
and keep moving forward. And if you don't, you can get passed by. And that's true in everything you do.
Well, you've always also kind of been a little bit of a big brother to me because you were kind and respectful to me, even though I was a walk-on. And then you were 2 years ahead of me in med school, so you kind of always looking out for me, man. I appreciate that.
Well, you're quite welcome, but that's how you treat people. Treat them the way you want to be treated, and I think that that's the only way to be.
That's right. That's right. Tell us, because you and I also talk a lot about faith, and at what point in your journey did faith become such a big deal to you?
Well, I grew up Catholic, and we at LSU used to have Mass before all the games, and I always go every Sunday with my parents, and it was a very important part of my life. And as we kind of moved on, and I didn't become an NFL quarterback, and went to med school, and did residency away from my wife, and family, which was very hard. I mean,
New York, right?
In New York, yeah. Faith was pretty important for kind of keeping me in a position to not just throw my hands up and quit and throw in the towel. So, I try to pray every day. I do the Mass readings every day, and it just keeps me centered, keeps me focused, and kind of, keeps me even keel. So without that, I'd probably been a mess.
Well, I tell patients all the time, and Julio and I talk about it. I don't know how people do it without God. 'Cause
I have no idea.
I tell patients, look, terminal pain is a terrible place to be, and you can get hopeless. And if you live in a hopeless place, that's a terrible place to live without a way out. And so I'll never tell you have to have a knee replacement or you have to have a hip replacement, but I will give you a pathway out of pain. And oftentimes just having that hope is enough to get through the next day.
Well, I think that's very true. And I'm probably similar to you. I don't ever push folks into surgery. But, this job and what we're blessed to be able to do, and the things you see, if you don't believe in God after doing what we do, I really don't understand that.
No.
Some of the people that have gotten better and been healed, in spite almost of what we do, makes you know that God is real and very active and alive in all of our lives, even though you may not realize that.
Well, one of the things I tell people is, an observation of the earth that we live on, I guess, is things that God made will heal. You cut a tree branch off, it'll grow back. Somehow, if we tie a rotator cuff tendon down, it heals.
Yeah.
We sew skin back together, it heals. Your car breaks down, doesn't heal. The things that man made can't fix themselves yet. And so I think you and I get front row seats to miracles that happen on a daily basis.
We do.
And we think we understand how healing occurs. We really don't.
We really don't, because some of the things you think that there's no way this is gonna heal based on what I've learned, what I've been trained to see and do. And then sure enough, patient comes in, they're getting better, they're happy, and that despite what I did, this patient healed. And I think it's a great thing. I mean, being able to be front row for that's a blessing.
Well, and I've had a rebirth of, I think, purpose in what we do. And I'll use the word sacred because it's during the timeout. And for those that don't know, the timeout is when we pause in the operating room and say, okay, this is the name of the person, this is what we're doing, and which side we're doing it on. It's very important because mistakes have been made.
Sure.
That is a very sacred time, but it's also a culmination of when someone has said, Dr. Greene, Dr. Loup, will you take a knife and cut me open? And if I don't need God then, I mean, I need him very badly then. And so does the patient,
Well, I 100% agree. And one of the things that I don't know, I'm sure my patients don't know, I don't share this with them. Before every case, I said, God, use my hands to do your work, because that's what it is. It's his work. I mean, we're blessed and trained to know how to do certain things to help with that. But that's one of the things that I ask for, that grace every time I operate. And the other thing that's interesting is, too, taking care of people is tough. It's a huge burden in some ways, mentally, more than it is physically.
Right.
And a patient asked me the other day, he said, you must be exhausted after operating all day. You're like yesterday, we were in the OR till 4:00, and I'm thinking to myself, actually not at all. I mean, I get to stand here and do what I enjoy doing, helping people get better. It's exciting, and it's a lot of fun. But being in clinic all day and talking to 45 or 50 people, and that's the most important 5 to 10 minutes of their day.
Yeah.
And you've got to be on for each one of those. I mean, that really whips you.
It does, and I think you and I are the same in that, I try to make an emotional connection with each patient.
Sure.
And what is 10 minutes to us, they're going to talk about for 3 days and put all over Facebook. So it's got to be meaningful. And I also tell the people that work for me, look, I mean, I have 40, 50 job interviews today.
Yeah.
Every day is a job interview.
It's a good way to look at it. But it's very true. And I always try to make an effort to make the last patient of the day who's been waiting out in the waiting room and watching everybody go in is probably mad at me.
Yeah.
I give a little extra time there because, I mean, that makes a huge difference.
I'll never forget when I first started, I wasn't as efficient as I am now. And so I got 2 hours behind in clinic. And the very last patient on a Friday, this lady and was taking care of her husband. And I tried to talk about, well, what do y'all do? And I'll never forget, she owns the jambalaya shop. And so I love that place. Right before LSU game, between the PMAC they would have etouffee with fried crawfish, and I like the creamy and the crunchy. And she goes, well, come by tomorrow. And they had waited 2 hours. And so the next day I go by. I thought I'd made up for it by like being real friendly and stuff. And I see her, and she goes, hey, Dr. Greene, here. And you didn't have to wait 2 hours for that, did you?
She didn't let you forget
no,
it.
but it's fun to have the relationship with patients, and it does require, I think, a little more effort and emotional bank to do that, because we often know the answer before or real quick about what they need.
Sure.
But I think what matters most to patients, and I've learned this by being a patient, is empathy.
Yeah, I agree. And people want to be heard. They want to feel like you're like you said, empathetic, and you hear them. I mean, they're frustrated. They've come to maybe one or two other physicians, and they get to you, and you're there to, in their mind, solve their problem, but also to hear them, just to hear and just be someone to listen. And that's in most of my interaction with patients, I'm not trying to do all the talking. I want them to talk. They'll tell you what the problem is. You just have to let them.
And I think patients are always right.
Pretty much, they're spot on. Body. Yeah, it's amazing.
My sister, Holland real well, and I never forget when she was working with me. I try to listen hard, and sometimes your mind will wander, whatever. But I never forget she said that the difference between being listened to and being loved is so small that most people just can't tell the difference.
Very good point. I agree with that. Sure.
Back to prayer, one other thing I was going to share with you is my dad, who knows, and he's kind of nearing the end, I think. But when he's a veterinarian, when he was operate on dogs, I would help him, and he would say, okay, let's say a little prayer. And his prayer was the same prayer I pray with patients, is, Lord, give me wisdom and guide my hands. And I'll never forget, I went to residency, and there's always some sanctimonious person, and there was this doc there, and when he would pray, he would be like, God, thank you for the skills that you've given me, and thank you for how great I am. And then he would pick up and thank you for Mr. Craig Greene, and like not even know the patient's name.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pray with patients. And when I come back, and my dad and I and my brother, we had to fix my brother's dog's humerus got shot. And he took it to a veterinarian, and it was going to cost him $4,000. And I said, I think we got this. You can put him to sleep. You get the hardware. We can fix it. So we did. And my dad said that little prayer again. I said, I think I can do that. And so nowadays, before I go, right before surgery, I'll tell the patient, assign them any questions. I say, look, I always say a little prayer. If you'd like, we could say it together. And, I want to respect their religion. If it's no, I'm going to say one. And they're oftentimes people 3 or 4 years later, I might see them in a restaurant, and they'll forget what I did to them. Yeah. But they'll tell their family, like, the doctor prayed with me,
Oh, I think it makes a difference. It definitely makes a difference. And on some of our patients, kind of like you, want to say a prayer. I have no problem saying that. They'll say, did you get good sleep last night? Did you, and you joke around, no, I stayed up all night and then had a few whiskeys, whatever. But, and they kind of laugh. I said, no, you say your prayers? Oh, yeah. You have no idea how many times I said my prayers. Yes. I do it all the time. So.
Well, let's switch gears. So we're also in a little fishing group.
Yes, we are.
I think that's a special group because not only do we do something that's not our daily job, we can compare notes. But we also talk about our families, our struggle. I mean, it's been priceless to me. I think we call it the fish and wolf pack, right?
Yeah, and the text messages on the OR sometimes seem to continuously ding and kind of disrupt things. But it is a lot of fun. It's good to have camaraderie amongst a bunch of your male friends. I think, like you said, you can kind of share experiences about what you're going through, with your adult children, with your younger children, and your job, and your all the things that are happening in your life. And it's also good to understand that the struggles you're having, that sometimes you feel like you're on an island, because we as men, we don't open up a lot.
We don't want to show weakness.
We don't want to show weakness. You don't want to, do that at all. And to hear that from other peers, and man, it just gives you that shared experience and helps you relate and makes you feel just not so alone and isolated. And that's been great.
Well, and you know what else too is rarely do we leave with like, oh, I got these 3 answers. It's just we kind of all vomited and caught some fish and drank some
beer. The
and
answers aren't always straightforward, but I mean, like you said, at least we have the shared experience, and we can kind of, it helps you.
That's right.
In your own struggles. So.
Yeah. Well, what's the next chapter of life look like for Chad Loup? You got your empty nest? Yeah, we're empty nesters.
My youngest daughter is at LSU, and she's a junior majoring in physics, a lot smarter than her father. Aced calculus, and at least somebody in the family understands calculus now, which is great. And then my other 2 daughters, one is working at a bridal boutique and sells wedding dresses and wants to be an event planner. And then the oldest is a medical assistant at the anti-aging clinic and is going to apply to PA school.
Nice.
And then I have 3 stepsons as well, one of which is on a tugboat. He's first mate in Crescent Towing, and then Evan, my middle stepson, plays music for a living. Very talented, extremely talented fella. Writes his own stuff. Plays all over the south part of Louisiana, and then even into Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And then the oldest, Zach, is a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and he's in Japan right now.
How long will he be there?
He's there until August, and then he's gonna, I think, go to South Korea, is what he was telling us after that. Hopefully getting promoted to commander, and then we'll see where from there. But he loves it. He loves being over there. We're very proud of him. We're very proud of all the kids. But yes, empty nest.
Well,
so that's a little different.
Let's talk about that for a little bit, because you and I discussed parenting a good bit, and I've got 2 in college now, and it's interesting how one of the things you and I have discussed is, when they're in high school, you tell them this is what you go do. And in college, it's more like, I've got a suggestion for you, or you want them to arrive at it on their own. And it's kind of like, how do you get them there?
Well, that's true. You kind of give them some, guidance, but you can't dictate what they're going to be doing. Mm-hmm. And I think the big thing is keeping the communication open. You never want to feel like you aggravate them so much that they don't want to talk to you, because they can cut you off, and they that's painful, because you don't want that. But you understand they're going to struggle. I guess the big thing for me is, when they have struggled, is knowing that it's going to get better. Mm-hmm. Things are going to get better, and just reassure them and be there to support them. And that's really it. Mm-hmm. Not so much giving them advice, just for support, because I think they need that. Right. Just like our patients we just talked about, they just want to be heard too.
It's a similarity, and I think I've talked about this, is how powerful the brain is. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, whether we tell patients...
Maybe your brain. I don't know about mine anymore.
My brain's wired a little differently. I know this. Is that, like, if you create this positive pathway of, like, if we tell a patient, okay, here's the knee replacement, this is what we're going to do, and I end it, and here's what we need, here's the potholes we need to avoid, the landmines, the ditches. But if we know what to look for, and we can try to avoid those, and if we do, you're going to do great.
Right.
And then that kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think it's the same with children. There's not, I've heard it said that some parents will prepare the path for their children, and others will prepare their child for the path. And I'm more of the B type. Like, hey, I'm not going to clear the path for you.
Well, that's a good point. They have to do the work. They have to put in the time, put in the hours. Because my grandmother used to tell me all the time. She said, you don't have your children for yourself. They're going to have their own lives. They're going to do their own things, and you want to be a part of that, but don't strangle them. Is what her point was. And to your point, they have to go out and do the work and make their own way. And you just have to support them, but you cannot do it for them. They have to do it. And that's a tough lesson, because sometimes they kind of expect, especially, and our kids are probably in a similar situation. We can give them a few things that maybe other kids don't have access to. And the tendency is for them to maybe kind of just, rest on their laurels, so to speak, and think that dad's going to fix everything, but dad can't fix everything and doesn't want to fix everything and shouldn't fix everything. And then, a little struggle is not the worst thing in the world.
That's right. It's fun to watch them get out of some jams. And I've always thought if they're going to mess up, I want them to do it under my house first, under my roof.
Well, that would be helpful. And another thing I tell the kids sometimes is where you stumble, where you struggle, dig for treasure. Because sometimes that's going to be the thing that helps you more than you ever know. I mean, if everything was easy and everything you did worked out perfectly, I mean, what's the challenge? Right. But you don't learn anything sometimes that way. So, the struggle is usually good.
Yeah. You and I often trade books. Are you in the middle of any good books?
Actually, at this point, not really. I'm not reading anything. I'm trying to keep up with my new partner, Dr. Fury, trying to read all the latest articles in the Journal of Arthroscopy and things like that.
Yeah, you can quote him, man.
Yeah, he's great. But
well, I'll never forget. I do have to tell a Chad Loup story. So I was interviewing in New York for residency, and bless his soul, was it Dean or Doug?
Dean Lorich.
Lorich, trauma guy. I did trauma, and on my resume I put football because I was on the football team. I didn't. To play is an overstatement. I rehabbed and went to practice, but
you had a jersey.
I had a jersey. Matter of fact, we had the same number. my kids will look at our team photo from '92 and they go, "Dad, there's a number 16, but then there's another number 16." I'm like, "What happens to be my best friend?" And he was really number 16. I was number 106. And they go, "How does that work?" But I explained to him. But so I was interviewing, and I don't take the story the wrong way because I think it can be said of all of us. But Dean Lorich was fascinated with Chad Loup. And the entire interview, we didn't talk about orthopedics or anything. We talked about Chad Loup. All he wanted to know was football stories. And I'd never thought of my response before, but he said, "What was Chad like?" And I said, "Well, I really think Chad was better than he got credit for, but not as good as he thought he was." So I don't know if you know that I ever said that about you.
That's probably pretty accurate.
Looking back at, if I examine my own talents, that could probably be said of me too. It's like sometimes I'm better than I get credit for, but I'm rarely as good as I think.
Well, maybe we're all that way a little bit, huh?
Right.
Yeah, Dean was a fascinating guy. I was really lucky to be able to train under him. But Dean was kind of a taskmaster. He was an excellent surgeon, excellent technician, very smart, very thorough, very, very well prepared for every case we did. But he was not one to put up with much BS, so to speak. So, once he kind of took a liking to you, he would try to help you as much as he could. And at the time, when I was in New York, my daughter Carly had just been born. So it was one of the hardest days of my life to 2 weeks after she was born to take off on an airplane to go work for a couple of months and not see her. That was heartbreaking. And I'll be honest, I cried all the way back. I mean, it was tough. So something I think happened a few months later. I was supposed to go home and be able to get, and something fell through, and I couldn't get out. And Dean pulled me in his office and he said, "Listen," he goes, "I understand your struggle. I was in fellowship, when my wife and daughter were not away from me." He said, "But it's going to end, and you need to take good care of these people and do the best you can, and don't feel sorry for yourself, because this is going to be over soon, and it's going to be just fine." He goes, "I've lived it." So that really helped me a little bit. I mean, it wasn't much, but it did help me to stay in that moment, to stay focused and saying, "Okay, look, focus on the end goal, not the struggle you're having right here today." So even though he was hard on us and all, but we needed that. I mean,
just like coach.
Just like coach. And it makes you a better surgeon, because then when you get out into practice, I mean, you've seen a lot and you've experienced a ton of things, and that helps you. And all of a sudden you see something in practice, you say, "Hey, I remember this is that same thing." You
and I always laugh about Curly-isms, but there was one that is, I think is very true.
Which is?
If you always do. Good, you finished.
What you always done, you always get what you always got. In fact, he had shirts made for us to wear like that. But it does ring true, you know. It
Unfortunately,
really
he just kept doing what he kept doing.
Well, in his case, it didn't work out. Right. You know, maybe he should have
adjusted. But the saying is nonetheless true.
That's correct. That's correct.
And that's also the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
One could say that, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us about your free time. I know that you've got a place out in the country. You embrace solitude. How refueling is that for you?
Well, it's very nice. You know, after a week of making decisions, you kind of want to get in a position where you don't have to do that, and you can just kind of be. And there's 2 ponds out. We have a little farmhouse in 20 acres with 2 ponds. I have a little tractor. I like to push stuff around and mow things. It's kind of therapeutic and it's quiet. I like to hunt and fish, of course. And I like to spend time with my kids, you know, when they're available. We like to do a little exercising and walk their dogs and, you know, go to dinner every now and then. So that's a lot of fun. And now that everybody's out the house, and my wife and I are going to try to travel a little bit more, which is going to be hopefully good.
Yeah, we're going to land a plane here, but why don't you tell us about some of your recent travels? I think you got to see Aurora Borealis, is that right?
That's correct. You know, in August and September, Michelle and I, my wife, we went to Japan to visit Zach for 2 weeks, which was fascinating. Great culture, cleanest place you ever want to go. Was phenomenal. People are nice. And then for our 25th wedding anniversary in early December, we went to Iceland to see the Aurora Borealis, which ironically the trip almost got canceled because of that volcano that was in Grindavik.
It didn't impact y'all, though? It
didn't impact us at all, but 2 days before the trip, my wife was like, I don't think we're going. I mean, we're not going to get stuck on Iceland. But it turned out that everything worked out. But if you get a chance to see that, what a phenomenal natural phenomenon. Just really cool. And Iceland itself was a beautiful country. So it was a great trip.
Well, look, let's finish with this one. It's a question I'm going to ask you, and that is, you've lived an incredible life, a life that a lot of people don't get to live. Not easy, but it's had its challenges, and you still are crushing it in life. But I know the anxieties that were along the way. And now at 50-something, what would you tell your 22-year-old version of yourself?
Well, I would
give us two.
2 things. I would say, number one, you know, don't necessarily wish for an easy life. You kind of want a hard life, because that's going to help sharpen you in a lot of ways. And the other thing is just not quit. Never stop getting up and going after it again. Because, you know, if you do, you're never going to accomplish anything.
That's right.
And to not be in a hurry, I guess, to get everything done so quickly, that this is not a sprint. It's more of a long-term deal. So I think that may have helped me with early on, not to be so anxious about things. But
isn't it crazy? The only way you learn that is life.
Well, it is, and it's kind of like I'd heard one time. You know, in school's easy. You learn a lesson, and then you go take a test on what you learn. But in life, you get tested, and then you learn the lesson.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Kind of
constantly tested.
Constantly, yes.
Well, man, look, I appreciate you being on.
Thanks you very much.
How can people find you? Do you want to be found?
Sometimes, right? Sometimes not. Well, I'm the satellite physician of Baton Rouge Orthopedics in Gonzales, and we're right behind Our Lady Lake Ascension Hospital off Highway 30. So that area is growing leaps and bounds. So we're excited to be a part of that.
Well, if anybody's around there and they need a good orthopedic surgeon, my criteria is, would I let you operate on me? And the answer is yes. So,
well, we appreciate that. Same goes with you, buddy.
All right, my friend. Appreciate you. Love you. Glad. Right. Thanks for being on. Thank you for joining us today, and a big thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to this surgical exploration of politics, healthcare, and life. I've been your host, Dr. Craig Greene. Remember to stay informed, stay sharp, and join us next time to see which of life's topics we'll dissect under the knife.